All right, so next topic that I'm going to talk about is Smartlist Designer specifically. So going through a while back, I did a presentation on both Smartlist and Smartlist Designer. Today I'm going to go through Smartlist Designer a little bit more, give more of a demonstration and everything, and talk about some of the new features that they have out. And I also want to show some of the easy ways to add new views and things like that, and some of the other topics you can work with. So the agenda, what is Smartlist Designer if you don't know what it is, where you can find it, why you would use it, how does it work, and some of the new options and cool things that they have in it. So Smartlist Designer, if anybody doesn't know this yet, any GP version 2013 and newer has Smartlist Designer available. And what it is basically the out-of-the-box option alternative to Smartlist Builder. So if you have Smartlist Builder today, don't worry about Smartlist Designer. Keep rolling with what you have. There's a lot more capabilities in it. It's a little bit more intuitive and everything. Not to say that this isn't going to catch up at some point and be a prime contender for the out-of-the-box option and everything, but it is available to you today. And what does it allow you to do? So Smartlist Designer is the same concept as Smartlist Builder. If you need a new Smartlist, you want to make a new one, you want to add new tables, you want to join new tables together, you just don't have what you need out of the one, it allows you to create a new Smartlist. So if you've noticed and you have access to it, and power users just immediately adopt this and everything, but if you notice on your Smartlist window now, you have a new button in the upper left-hand corner for new. You also have a modify on there too, which lights up whenever you actually modify an existing or custom Smartlist. So why would you use it? Obviously, you're going to create and design new Smartlists. It's free. That's always a good one there. If you aren't using Smartlist Builder to date and you've ever had the need to build a new Smartlist, or you're just getting into that area where you'd love to have some new Smartlists available and such, it's available with your GP license. This one, it just continues to prove out with GP 2016 and 2015. It just gets better and better with every update. They continue to develop on top of it. I think, go out and go, Smartlist does this. That'd be kind of nice if we did that too. So I think they use a lot of their stuff as a template as they're building it out too. It's user-friendly to some extent. I always put that in there as the caveat that it's not as pretty and nice as Smartlist Builder, not as intuitive in some of the parts, but honestly, if you know where you're going and what you're doing, it's not as bad as you would think. And then, like I said, with some kind words and thoughts, it can work very well for you. And honestly, if you say some mean things to it, it'll work for you also. I've had those moments. So it's simple to get started. Like I said, you go to your Smartlist and you want to get started. So you just click on New at the top to get started. It's going to take you into your window here where you actually start working with pulling in your tables and things of that sort. So in my example, one of the things that I wanted to work with was, the customer master summary. Okay, so right now, if you pull up your customer Smartlist, it gives you thousands of columns that you can pull together, and some of those are aging, some of them are customer balance and things of that sort. So the way this window works, when you hop into it, I'm going to walk through some of this too as I get into it, but you choose and you'll get a list of all your products. So if you've seen any of these out there right at the moment, it'll list all of your licensed products in that list right there that are in GP. So you'll see project accounting and Microsoft Dynamics GP and manufacturing and any of the other pieces that have been added onto the GP platform. And then it starts breaking down further. You got your tables here, you get into the financials, you get into sales, you get into all sorts of different aspects there as you dig through it. And then you can get in and start picking your tables. So which are the tables that you want to use? Well, Customer Master looked nice in this case, and I added it, and I started checking the boxes for it, so they start filling in the field. Also, you can add new tables and set up those relationships. So one of the pieces there, which we get into that detail, is how you would join that together and everything. So we get in, we choose, we start working through it, start checking those boxes next to the tables that we want to work with. To select more than that, more than one table, you would just check the box next to that table, or more specifically, and a good rule of thumb with these, if you're going to get in and start playing around with this at all, instead of checking the high-level checkbox, just grab the fields that you want. Don't click on the top one, because all of a sudden in your top pane you're going to get an entire list of all the fields that were in that table whereas maybe you only wanted the customer number and customer balance. So keep that in mind as you're clicking those and getting click happy and everything with it. So as you look with that, as you get those in, review the selected fields. Just so you know, there is no way to change the default order once they were added, at least not that I found, without deleting them and adding them back in. So you can hold the Shift key and select a range of those and remove them as you want to using the red X in the upper right-hand corner. But like I said, it's not just a nice little intuitive, okay, whoops, I put the customer name above the customer number. I would love that to be there. Drag and drop it down below. Now you'd have to pull it back out and put it back in at that point. So it's a couple little things to pay attention to. So the relationship pane, if you are adding in more than one table to it, so in this case I wanted to add my customer master. Okay, so my customer master table, just so everybody knows, doesn't actually have the customer name in it. It's only got the customer number. So I performed join to grab the customer master so I could get my name. And I performed what's called an inner join. So several different joins will show up in that drop-down whenever I go to select. So an inner join means it's a one-to-one relationship. What exists in one table must exist in the other, or it just doesn't return anything. So if you only want it to be where, let's say you wanted to pull sales transactions and you only wanted where it was, existing customers, not any prospects or customers that have been deleted or things of that sort, the data has to exist between those two tables that I joined together. A left join means it's still going to select everything that's basically on my left, anything that exists in the left table, and return anything on the right table. Had I flipped this around in the way that I had my screenshot here, think of it this way. If I put my customer on the left side and had the left outer join, it would return all of my customers regardless if they had a master summary or not. So that concept there, if you want to return everything regardless of activity, then you can perform the left outer join. Cross joins means that you just don't care. You're going to return everything from everything and let it all report out there, and it'll basically return everything from one table, return everything for the other, and anything that doesn't match up between the two gets a null on it, and you just don't see anything in that specific table. So you could end up with customers' data showing up in the customer summary, you have data showing up on the customer master, and bounce back and forth between those. So that's kind of the concept there as we look through that. The other thing that you can do, and this, it can get aggravating, but it also works for very simple functions and things like that. You can add calculated fields. So if you ever wanted to do, something that reverses the sign, or you wanted to have something for, sales minus cost on a sales transaction to get some of the margin or anything along those lines, you can perform some fairly basic expressions out here. I've ran into instances where if I tried to plug in tons and tons and tons of stuff here, it just finally tells me to stop. So it works really well for very simple functions, can handle several different things. I've done case statements in here too, so I mean it can get into a little bit more of the more in depth of some of the SQL functions and things like that, because that's essentially what it's writing within these. So arithmetic, constants, different things like that, if you wanted anything along those lines to go in there. And that was all through this little FX in the upper right-hand corner there. So Smartlist Designer, and they continue to grow upon this, and I look for them to add a little bit more as they go along, but it's still, even in 2016, it's still limited that you can create a GoTo. So concept behind a GoTo is whenever you pull up a Smartlist and you double-click it, you go somewhere, right? So that's the idea of a GoTo, is that on any one of these you can create a GoTo, and at this point it's only a GoTo another Smartlist, go to a navigation list, or go to a web page. So if you had a situation where you wanted it to take you to transaction or something like that, you made one through here, have it go to one of the out-of-the-box smart lists, and then jump from there to where you wanted it to go. So that's one way you can make it work for you how you want to. No control to specify the parameters on the GoTo or anything along those lines. So just be aware that even though I added it and said, hey, I want you to go to sales transaction, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go to my transactions and say, only show me for this customer or whatever it was that was specific in the previous one. So then as I'm working with this, to create the new one or to modify it or anything like that. So click the new, did I just backwards? Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Got lost for a second. So the only ones that you can essentially work with on this next one, you can publish Excel spreadsheets out to Excel and things of that sort. So keep in mind that they've broadened their horizon a little bit further, and now you can actually publish these out to the Excel documents like you see for the refreshable ones that are already deployed with GP. So you would select one of the existing ones that you modified. So none of the other ones, they're already out there. You're not going to deploy one of those. But any of the ones that you've created from that point, whenever you select them, you should end up with a publish icon up at the top that lights up that you can work with. So whenever you create one that was created from a view, you will now have the option to publish that. So keep that in mind as I say that. It has to be created from the view for it to be published out. And that's what I've ran into in the past. I can't join together out of that table list and join things together. I'll show you how a view works in here. But basically, as you run down the list of available database entities out here, and you get to the bottom, there's one that's views. Well, the benefit of this is any views that have been created, whether they're an external data source, something from an outside system, CRM, they could be anything that you've created out there as a SQL view, you can surface that. But in order to set this up to publish out to Excel, it has to be a view that it's pulling from at that point. Views, a good rule of thumb with a view is think of any one of the smart lists that you have canned right at the moment. So sales transactions, customers, customer address, any one of those has the, 9 times out of 10 has an identical SQL view in the database for the name that's on the smart list. So if I was to pull up SQL Server right now and we weeded through the views in my database and everything, you'd see one that replicates pretty much the smart list name as it shows up in GP. So sales transaction smart list, sales transaction SQL view. So a lot of times we can surface those types of things out there. So a couple of new things. R2, they snuck this one in, and I've been working more and more with workflow, and this was just a new one that I had found as I was working through there. So one of the options on David's presentation was there was an administrative tab now on the workflow. And whenever you go to administration within this, one of the things is create a view. Okay, great. So before workflow was available and they added this option in, somebody could go in and create a beautiful smart list, and if somebody wasn't real careful about their access and everything, all of a sudden they're looking at payroll data, and great. So they could get into areas that they didn't need to. So now, if you're creating a new smart list and you go to generate it and you save it and say that you want to put it out there, you can actually set up workflows that are based off of those Smartlist Designer views that want to get deployed, because anytime we're saying, okay, join this together and this together, it's creating what GP recognizes as a view. So you can set approvals up on that and say, okay, somebody just created a smart list, and this individual's tried to submit it, and the table name in the database or part of the actual technical name or friendly name or whatever it may be had GL in it. So it's one of my GL tables that they're trying to pull out and run a smart list off of and extract data from GP. Well, in this case, they would pick up on it and said, okay, the smart list they submitted had GL in the physical name of this, route to so-and-so to look at it and say, great, that's all right, they can deploy this, or they go in and take a look at it and make sure that they're not reporting off of something that they need. There's quite a few options. There's all sorts of different strategies that we can do with it. Not only can it be driven by the actual table, but it could also be based on a field. So if they were trying to access a specific Social Security field or something along those lines, then it could actually pick up on that. So that's a nice addition that they've added with the workflow that would route to an individual. That individual would get an email, depending on how you have your workflow set up. They could look at it, approve it, do whatever they need with it. But at least that adds a layer of security to the Smartlist Designer that wasn't available outside of just saying you can't create a smart list. And the other new thing that they've added, which is nice for me and is nice for everybody else, is the ability to import and export. So anytime I create a Smartlist Designer smart list, I have the ability to export that and pass it along. At some point we can build up a library of custom Smartlist Designer smart lists, and we could pass them over to you once you're on 2016, and you could import them, and you're on your way. As long as there's nothing complex behind the scenes or any magic that we had to do with it to base it on a certain set of data, we can do the import and export of that and pass it along. So, more collaboration at that point, but makes my life easier. It also adds that level of, hey, we want to back these up. We'd like to, before I go in and start making changes to this really nice smart list that somebody's put together and I blow it up and they're going to have a grudge against me forever, I can go in and I could export it and save that, and I could re-import it if I really, really broke something that I didn't remember what I did. So it's kind of the benefit there. Last one, and I've shown this numerous times, but I like to show it again just for the simple fact that there's a few updates on here. So these used to be no's, now they are yeses, as I would consider them. Yes with workflow, yes with workflow for list level security and table level security. So now with workflow in there, we can handle certain levels of that. What this diagram does is it compares. There's always that question of, should I go with Smartlist Builder? Should I go with Smartlist Designer? What's the difference? What does one give me versus the other and everything? Friends over at E1 could give you a shining demonstration of all the wonderful things out of Smartlist Builder. I could do it also. It's just really, where does it fall? What complexity do you need to accommodate in your smart list that you're trying to write? So this diagram just outlines kind of all the things that theirs does that Smartlist Designer doesn't quite do, except what I did is I tried to update those. So a couple new yeses here, and then the yes there for the import-export of those setups. So they keep getting more on their list, and I look for them to continue going down that path, and at some point, they're going to start to add, hopefully start to add features that maybe doesn't handle. So a couple of neat things there for it. And let's see, so hold off on questions for just a second. The one thing that I wanted to show, and I brought up the concept of a view. Now, if anybody has any friends in the company that know databases and can work with databases or anything along those lines, you could talk to them, point them out to this wonderful website for Victoria Uden. And if you found a report out here that you really liked, you could tell them where the view is at, and it's really simple to add this in. So if that user who has database access can come out here, copy that text and throw it into GP, and they just have to copy it exactly as she has it composed at that point. But if they come in and they paste that in here and they execute that and do nothing else with it, that then becomes available in our Smartlist Designer. So I just created a brand new view based off of her script from her website. No changes whatsoever. I simply cut, paste, ran it, executed it, and now I'm in Smartlist Designer. And if I want to use that now, scroll down to my views, expand my company, and I realize not everybody's going to be playing around with SQL Management Studio, and good for you, but it does open the doorway for not only are you using the GP ones, but if somebody wants to grab a piece of code or has a piece of code, or you've got a custom view or anything along those lines to date, it's easily surfaced through here, and now we've got data being pulled from other tables that weren't regularly available. Maybe you've got things embedded in here. One of the pieces of software I work with is RecLogic, and it's got all sorts of different things in it for workflow and requisitions and things like that, but it's completely outside of the GP database. I could make something that joins purchase orders in GP to the RecLogic requisitions and surface that data through a smart list. What's the status? What workflow steps did it go through? So that conceptually, not any longer with Smartlist Designer are you inhibited by any of the tables that are out there. Somebody could write a view, you can grab the view 2 seconds like I did, throw it out there, and now you have data surfaced from multiple data points that weren't already out there. And the nice thing about those views is that they're usually composed in a nice and pretty way that you really don't have to touch them very much. And hers is pretty cool. It's just the nice thing about her views too is that it already has a little grant select statement in there right now. So if I was to create a view today, I actually have to tell it that GP users can actually access it. But a lot of hers already have that built in there, and then this is it. So pretty cool. Nothing in Smartlist right now that puts it into the month buckets. So there's some pretty neat ones out there that she has written already. Not to say that we couldn't go above and beyond that with some of the expertise under our roof.